ground. Face down on the ground.
No, don't do that.
Get down on
Get
the ground.
down! Drop it!
Get down. Go up. I got your hands out.
Show me your hands!
Hands out.
Hands!
All right, guys, we start another week here on this Monday morning. You guys are going to see some stuff here. It's grandson's birthday today, so we've decorated. We're going to throw a little party for him later. You're going to hear breakfast cooking. When I get done here, come on over and get some eggs and stuff. So we're having breakfast, so you guys are invited. But before we get to that, let's talk about the 5 police officers out of Oklahoma that have been charged with manslaughter following an investigation on the shooting of a guy who was shot after he dropped the gun on the ground. Why? Because he reached for his cell phone. Let's look at it. Thank you to USA Today for this story. 5 Oklahoma City police officers will be charged with first-degree manslaughter in the fatal shooting of a 15-year-old robbery suspect last November. The officers were identified by police as Bethany Sears, Jared Barton, Corey Adams, John Scuda, and Brad Pemberton. The suspect, Stavian Rodriguez, was shot around November 23rd after he had dropped a gun outside an Okie Gas Express in Oklahoma City. The shooting led to protests in Oklahoma City last year and a negligence claim against the city. One protester wrote on a sign held outside a police station on December 12th, "How many more?" Ward 6 councilwoman JoBeth Heyman wrote on Twitter last year, "No one should be executed because they made furtive movements. Our systems are broken and need to be reimagined and need rebuilding." In November, police said Rodriguez was shot when he did not follow officers' commands after climbing out of the drive-through window holding a pistol. Actually, if you look at the video, he was shot because after he dropped the pistol on the ground. So don't say he was shot because he wasn't following their commands after climbing through the drive-through window holding a pistol. He dropped that pistol, then was shot. Let's get it right. Police announced Wednesday that Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater has informed the department the officers will be charged. Police released body camera videos with the announcement. Prater also released the body cam videos and a security camera video. Not being charged is Sergeant Sarah Carley, who fired a less lethal weapon, police said. The videos show a number of officers yelling commands at the same time as Rodriguez comes out the window.
The 6th officer, not charged, fired a non-lethal weapon. Court documents also say Stavian didn't have any other weapons, but they did find a cell phone in his back pocket.
One officer said,
Show us your hands, sir.
Yeah.
Nobody has to get hurt. Just show us your hands.
Rodriguez can be seen lifting his shirt, taking the gun out of his waistband and holding it out by its extended magazine. One officer says,
No, don't do that.
Get down on
Get
the ground.
down! Drop it!
but once he lowers his hands and reaches towards his back pocket as he's being told to get down, he's shot. The Oklahoma City Fraternal Order of Police said again Wednesday that the officers acted lawfully. John George, the FOP president, said officers must make life and death decisions in a split second, relying on their training. When an armed robbery suspect did not obey police commands, 5 officers perceived the same threat and simultaneously fired their weapons. A loss of life is always a tragedy, and we know these officers did not take firing their weapons lightly. The OKC FOP stands by these officers and maintains they acted within the law. Now, somebody had told me, because I was criticizing another police union in another city, and someone said, well, what do you think he's going to say? I mean, what do you expect him to say? The unions are always going to back their employees. Well, we know that, but here's the thing. When a cop does something wrong, A union can support that officer. A union can stand by that officer. That's what the union is supposed to do. But to say they acted lawfully, that's just going a little too far. Okay? I mean, what if this officer just walks up and executes somebody who's unarmed in the middle of the street? You're going to say, well, the officer acted lawfully. We stand behind the officer. It's okay to say we stand behind him. You're the union. But to say he acted lawfully? You know who the FOP presidents are? Cops and former cops. Come on, guys, do the math. Police reform advocates praised the move to charge the officers, but expressed skepticism that justice in this case would be served. Oklahoma City activist Adriana Laws, co-founder and president of the Collegiate Freedom and Justice Coalition, said, "I'm slightly relieved to see that Prater did the right thing in charging these cops. However, we have to get through convicting and sentencing and make sure the sentences handed down are adequate for the crimes they committed." Other police reform advocates said Wednesday police departments are refusing to change practices and training techniques, which results in unnecessary killings. Sarah Banna, a civil and human rights advocate, said, quote, "This was absolutely an unnecessary and preventable homicide of a 15-year-old child. The Oklahoma City Police Department has refused to take any necessary steps to reduce the pattern and practice of police brutality and police violence." One law enforcement expert said body cam video, which was released to the public Wednesday in the Rodriguez case, may not tell the whole story. Robert Pusins, the 35-year law enforcement veteran in Florida who provides expert testimony at trials, said it appears that Mr. Rodriguez has dropped his weapon and was no longer armed and was subsequently shot by the police. We're looking at video, so we are not seeing everything that the officers may be seeing. We're seeing what the video captured. Now remember, this is a 35-year law enforcement veteran who gives expert testimony. Who do you think he's an expert for? He says, looking at the video, we're not seeing everything the officers are seeing. What's to see? The guy went like this, and then it drops to the ground. He reaches behind him, but they don't see what he's pulling out. Turns out it's a cell phone. Some recent fatal shootings by police in the Oklahoma City area have resulted in officers being charged and sent to prison. Wow. In 2020, a Walmart security guard was charged in Oklahoma County District Court with assault and battery with a deadly weapon for shooting a fleeing shoplifting suspect.
They were in the parking lot. The suspect was trying to get away. At one point, he backs a car up and hits the officer with the car door. At some point after hitting with the door, the off-duty officer began firing.
Police say the man was taken to the hospital. He is expected to survive. Police tell us they're hearing that the man had a receipt and claims that he left the store with more than he paid for. The University of Langston Police Department, where the off-duty officer actually works full-time, sending us this statement saying in part they intend to cooperate with Del City Police if their assistance is requested.
In December of 2019, an Oklahoma County District Judge sentenced former Oklahoma City police officer Keith Sweeney to 10 years in prison after a jury convicted him of second-degree murder in the shooting death of a suicidal man.
An Oklahoma City police sergeant found guilty of second-degree murder will serve 10 years behind bars. A judge handing down the sentence to Officer Keith Sweeney earlier today in a case we've been following for more than 2 years.
It's a 10-year prison sentence for Keith Sweeney. The decision against the police sergeant handed down Wednesday afternoon.
Tragedy for Sweeney. Like I've said this, I think the night of the verdict, it's a tragedy for the United States Navy, Oklahoma City Police. Nobody won in this instance.
Found guilty of second-degree murder after shooting and killing 29-year-old Dustin Pigeon back in 2017. In court, Sweeney saying he opened fire because he thought Pigeon, who was soaked in lighter fluid, had a weapon. An investigation later revealed Pigeon was unarmed, suicidal, and no threat to police. Moments after the judge's sentencing, Pigeon's family speaking to News 4.
Just like the court said, there's no winner here, but we respect the decision of the court. We feel that justice is served.
Body cam video shows 2 officers pleading with Pigeon. When only on scene for 12 seconds, Sweeney comes in, threatening to shoot. Seconds later, Pigeon was dead. His family saying as painful as his death was, they're now shifting their focus, hoping what happened to their brother will be a reminder to all law enforcement officials.
If this isn't a job that you want to do anymore and you show up to a place with no sincerity, then get out of the job. Find another profession.
In 2014, former Del City police officer Randy Trent Harrison was convicted of first-degree manslaughter and sentenced to only 4 years in prison for fatally shooting an unarmed fleeing suspect in the back.
A police captain is headed to prison. I'm Jessica Shambach.
I'm Paul Folger. Just moments ago, a jury convicted Randy Harrison of manslaughter in the shooting death of Dane Scott Jr. KOCO's Naveen Dhaliwal has been following this big story. Naveen, tell us about the reaction.
Well, Paul, after a verdict is read, you usually see one side very happy, but that was not the case this afternoon. There were a lot of tears as many left the courtroom. Now, this is what we know. Randy Harrison was first let out of the courtroom. He was stoic. He showed no reaction in front of our cameras, but his attorney tells us he is just devastated by this outcome. Dane Scott's family hugged as they came out, satisfied by the guilty verdict. But most interesting was to see the emotion shown by both attorneys, with DA David Prater saying there are no winners in this case.
I pray for Dane Scott's family. I pray for Randy Harrison and his family. And I'm glad it's over. Thank you.
Just sorry for Randy for the way this came out. He has been an exemplary law enforcement officer for the last 25 years. He got caught up in a situation that was none of his own choosing.
And Harrison's sentencing is scheduled for early January. Right now he faces a minimum of 4 years in prison. So quite an emotional afternoon here.
Unarmed, fleeing, shot in the back, 4 years. Now, if that was you or I, we'd be looking at life without parole. But we're not cops. I want to know what you all think about this in the comment section below. I'm going to get people on both sides of the fence on this one. I know that, well, the guy reached back, but we don't know what he was going to pull out. They should have waited to see what he was going to pull out. Well, they couldn't see everything. The guy went like this and then drops the gun. He didn't do that. I'm just saying there was a pause. He just stood there and then he dropped it. So what, he reached back? They didn't know what he was going for. He could have been going for a knife. He was all the way across the gas station. The only smart one there was the sergeant who shot less than lethal rounds. Community Leo Watch, watching Leos, that's law enforcement officers, to include those that just shoot because the person's there and from coast to coast.